I want you to think for a moment about what brings you here to St. George's this morning. And while you're thinking about your own answer to that question, I want to raise up a couple of the stories that I do know bring us together today. Some of you are here because of a very courageous and difficult decision that two communities recently made here in St. Catherine's, Grace and St. James, to leave their buildings and to renew and strengthen ministry elsewhere. I know that many of us are here this morning, at least in part, to celebrate a momentous moment in the history of Grace and St. George's, as we come together for the first time officially to share together and partner together in ministry, looking for all of the ways in which we can be stronger for having come together. I know that some of you are here this morning because you have connected to St. George's for many years and in some cases for many generations. Some of us have connected more recently with St. George's, and some of you might be entirely new this morning or visiting this morning. And there is a reason why you have been drawn to this place and this community. I know that many of us, whether we're newer or whether we're longtime members, would say that there have been times when we have been feeling lost or fragile or brokenhearted, and we have found it most important to gather here in this space with this people and to feel that sense of strength and peace around us, to draw closer to God, to draw closer to what is true and what is lasting about our lives. There are three interesting stories in our baptisms this morning. Skylar's family have connected here at St. George's through the name of Grace. Grace Anglican Church is an important name in the life of their family, and so in a circuitous way, they come today for this baptism through the journey of Grace Anglican, also coming here to partner in ministry. For Malik and for Lincoln, there is a family connection that brings them here. Now you have to follow this closely, but Malik's niece was baptized here in 2014. So Malik's mother's granddaughter was baptized here in 2014, and Malik's parents say very openly that Malik is for them a miracle. Lincoln is the fourth generation in his family to be baptized here at St. George's, going back to his great-grandmother, Shirley Swanwick. And Shirley and David served so faithfully and gave so generously in this community for basically their whole lives. And both of them we were so sad to lose last year. And yet, in my mind's eye, and I'm guessing in their family's mind's eye as well, they can see Shirley and David smiling down on Lincoln being baptized here at St. George's today. There are as many stories as there are people that bring us to St. George's this morning. And there's also a story that unites us all, a very ancient story of 2,000 years ago, when four people, Jesus and Peter and James and John, chose to come down the mountain. We are here today because Jesus and Peter and James and John chose to come down the mountain. Today we celebrate the Transfiguration, which is a pivotal, pinnacle moment in the life and ministry of Jesus. It's a moment of stunning enlightenment, where Jesus' appearance is changed before the eyes of his closest followers, and he is anointed with the white-hot light of God. This is not just a pinnacle moment for these four people, it's also entirely improbable. Who would have thought, for example, that three fishermen, three nobodies from nowhere, could have been handpicked by Jesus and could have been brought up the mountain to receive that ultimate spiritual enlightenment and to hang out with Moses and Elijah, the greatest figures and prophets of the Jewish faith? This is a moment of improbable achievement for these three very humble, very ordinary, everyday people. But it's also kind of improbable for Jesus, who is also a nobody from nowhere, a peasant, homeless, son of a carpenter from the slums of the Roman Empire. They would say about Galilee, what good could possibly come out of Galilee? And here is Jesus, transfigured by the light and love of God. Peter, I think, speaks for all of them in saying, why don't we just stay here? This is great. We'll build a couple of huts. We'll stay on this mountain forever and ever. It sounds crazy. It's not. It would have been very plausible for them to parlay this moment of spiritual enlightenment into a mountaintop ministry. People would have come from far and wide to hear the charismatic teachings of Jesus and to receive his powerful healing. They could have all just lived happily ever after up there on the mountain. And crashing into that very nice dream comes the voice of God. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. These are very disappointing words. They are crushingly disappointing words. Because to listen to Jesus is to hear what he has to say, and what he has just said right before they go up the mountain is that his path leads to rejection and suffering and death. It's not what any of them wanted to hear. And yet we are here today because they heard and obeyed the voice of God. Because they understood that they had to come down from the mountain. Because they understood that 4 people are not enough people to see the light of God and to hear God's word of love. You are my beloved. We are here today because they understood that they had to go to the cross, that they had to be willing to lay it all on the line, that they had to be willing to enter into the heart of human suffering in order for all of the world to receive that light and love. There's another piece of the puzzle. Another piece of the puzzle behind our gathering today. Because 4 people were not enough people to hear and receive that light and that love, but 4 people were also not enough people to spread that light and that love. Peter and James and John and Jesus had to entrust that whatever it was that they had to share with others, that those hearers and those receivers would treasure that gift and then would share that gift. That has happened down through the generations and across the world for 2,000 years. Faithful men and women have caught a glimpse of God's light and have heard a whisper of God's love and have treasured that so completely that they have shared it with others. And that sharing through the generations and across the world comes to us here in St. Catherine's. And it's faithful men and women like that who built the ministries and communities and sanctuaries of Grace and St. James and St. George's and all of the other faith communities here in town. And it's their faithfulness, the sharing of their faithfulness, that allows us to be here today, to celebrate these 3 baptisms, to join together in ministry, and to look forward to all that God is doing in our midst. As we celebrate, we need to know that that call to come down the mountain is also our call. That we also need to know that there is light and love to treasure and to share into the heart of all human need and human suffering, out into the world and down through the generations. Amen.